those who are just now joining, I am Tabitha Bennett from AWS On Air. I'm the executive producer. I've been doing this since 2020, making sure that you have the latest and greatest news, announcements, and demos from AWS. And I have my co-host, Alana.
Hi, I'm Alana Kelton. I'm Senior Product Manager with AWS Launch Marketing. Yes.
And Alana got to bring her friend, Meet, a while ago. So I have my friend here. Why don't you introduce who you are to the audience?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I am Colin Mahoney. I am the General Manager of Redshift, which is our multi-petabyte scale native cloud data warehouse offering here at AWS.
So again, we've been talking about data. We've been talking about multi-region to help your databases. And now we're talking a little bit about warehouses, which I think is super important to our customers. Tell me, for those of you, and I know you kind of gave like a little high level, but for those of you who are just now joining, tell us a little bit about Redshift.
Yeah, so analytics is the backbone of pretty much everything that organizations are trying to do with data now. And what Redshift provides is a terrific platform to take your structured information, your semi-structured information, and be able to run a lot of different workloads to analyze that information. Everything from package dashboards to interactive type ad hoc queries.
Nice.
Reaching out even beyond Redshift, the platform itself, for storage, and going to places like S3 or going to operational data stores. Nice. What customers are really trying to do is take information from a bunch of different places and make sense of that information. And so you want to bring it together in a very seamless way.
Right. You
want to analyze it in a number of different ways. And of course, machine learning is driving this in many other interesting and new ways.
Oh, yeah.
And you want to be able to share access to that information and analysis as broadly as you can within your organization. So it's really about making sure you have the scale to collect and manage all that information that you analyze. Making sure, number two, that you get time to insights that is super fast.
I think that's super important because, like you said, you're pulling the data from multiple sources. You're having to make sense of the data, and you no longer get like a week or a month or a day to try and figure it out.
Yeah.
You have somebody going, I want to know this now in real time. And I think that's amazing that Redshift can do that because it's providing those insights instantaneously for people to use.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that people want that information instantaneously. We're also finding that other machines want that information, or other applications want that information instantaneously to make a decision.
That makes sense. And so tell me, you're talking about, we were talking earlier, you're looking at how to do self-service analytics with Amazon Redshift. So tell me a little bit about that.
There's another change that's been happening in the industry, which is traditionally analytics has been served up by relatively small teams within an organization who are database administrators. They're people who are adept at managing the information, getting it into the right table views, creating indices, doing all those things that you need to do, and then delivering that information.
Right.
What's been changing over the last more than a decade is we're all comfortable interacting with these systems.
Yeah.
We're all comfortable searching for information. So there's this insatiable appetite within organizations for everyone, not just the data teams, to have direct access to the information. And so the number of users that are going against data warehouses like Redshift are growing exponentially. And so in order to help serve them, we can't put that burden on the DBA teams or on the analytics teams.
We all know that most institutions, companies have a very small DBA team. I mean, you're talking maybe one or two, possibly three if you're lucky, who's trying to serve a whole organization. And like you said, you have marketing wanting data. You're having the analytics people and analyst relations wanting it. You're having the CEO. You're having the board. And then plus you're also having customers going, I need this information quickly pulled from my account. So that's, it sounds like you're doing something to make that heavy lift easier.
Exactly. We're doing a lot to make the self-service aspect much easier. And there are a number of different things that we do. Some of these are just around user experience.
Right.
Our query editor v2, as an example, is something where you don't need to be a console administrator access to use it. You can get in there, you can browse tables, you can write SQL, you can look at stored procedures, you can get some sample charts without having to go out and use any other third-party software to do. We also offer serverless. So when you think about these environments, yeah, there's that word again. But when you think about these environments, particularly in an analytics setting, we have we have customers running multiple petabytes of information in a single system.
Yes.
And the amount of information will vary over time based on workload. The number of users will vary over time based on workload. And so having serverless is a great way to, number one, make sure that they don't have to manage any of the hardware, but number two, match the efficiency of what they need to do with the workload to the actual infrastructure. And of course, when you're not running any of it, you pay zero. So the economics are there, but it's, when we think about the serverless experience, it's more than just, we're going to manage the hardware for you. There's a lot of optimizations and workload management and actually applying our own analytics and machine learning to try to foresee what workloads are going to be needed when, and how do we make sure that we're matching what's needed from an infrastructure standpoint to fulfill that.
And I can see where that's important. So, you know, let's say you take a global company, and we're here in London today, and our friends at home, our colleagues at home are, you know, luckily enough sleeping and having some good sleep. But, you know, they might not need access to certain data, or they might not need access to those tables right away. But you in London can get to them as quick as possible, and you're not needing a whole company to be up and awake and serving that to you.
Yeah, and I think the geo aspect is interesting too, because one of the other capabilities we have is data sharing and creating these shares in different regions, different locations, even different accounts, so that if you have a team and you want to segregate that workload for a particular geolocation or just a different team, we can do that. But you're absolutely right. Most of the companies that operate today are global, and the needs of users in one region are going to be very different at certain parts of the day and certain times of the year than another region.
Right, and I can see where, you know, you were talking about, you know, you can work with the analytics, you have some examples so people can take, but and to visualize, you know, I could see that maybe maybe London wants to see something different than US based. You know, they want to see a different way to visualize that data. And it sounds like, you know, Redshift can offer those different ways to visualize.
We offer the different ways to visualize. We offer the different ways to have views of the data. There are a lot of collaborative capabilities where we encourage the users who do something in Redshift to be able to share what they've done, so somebody else can pick that up and say, actually, that's interesting, but now I'd like to riff off of that and do something different. And I think that's the collaborative power of analytics at scale is where organizations see the most value from it. Being able to take maybe the same information, but use it for a lot of different use cases in a lot of different ways is what ultimately delivers the data value to organizations.
Absolutely, and just, you know, you said the magic word of scalability. You know, that allows, you know, different sessions or sections of companies to be able to scale up, scale down. Maybe marketing doesn't need all that analytics anymore. Maybe it's the PR team that needs it. Or if you're at Zillow, you know, they're needing that to see where's the next housing market going to either go higher, lower, how they can help on that. So I think that scalability is super important.
It is, and the scalability isn't just Redshift. When I think about scalability in terms of AWS, we're thinking about how can we ensure that the information that comes from any one of our services ends up in the right service at the right time. And so a perfect example of that is the zero ETL capability that we announced at reInvent, which is initially going to take information that's in Aurora in the operational database and automatically get it into Redshift, so that you have very minimal lag between it. And customers don't have to worry about doing the work manually to get that information from one service to another. And I think as you look at what we do with our around data lakes, and you look at EMR and Athena and Redshift, making it really easy to do different workloads that leverage the same information is important, because sometimes it makes sense to move the information from point A to point B. Other times it makes sense just to use the same information, but with our different services around it. And that's another aspect of scalability that I think is really important.
I think that's an interesting way to say it, and everybody uses this catchphrase, but I think it is important, is, it's where it needs to be, when it needs to be, to who it needs to be.
Yes.
To me, that's really important because, like you said, when you're dealing with data, there's so much, and when you're talking petabytes, there's so much you have to go through, so much you have to clean and get ready to even use in other services, and that alone is a very heavy lift. So then you're trying to do something with the data, which is another heavy lift. And I love the fact that it's very able to be integrated into other AWS products. Just like you said, you could either stay in one spot, you're good, or you can go in different places, and you can now get it ready for machine learning. And you can bring it into SageMaker and actually make use of that amazing data. And I think that's amazing. I do have a really quick question. What are the customer requirements for self-service analytics from data warehousing context?
It's very easy. So anybody that wants to get started with Redshift serverless can just go onto the console. In fact, if you've never used serverless before, we give a free credit to run serverless.
Free,
so free is always
credit.
good.
Remember that free credit.
And you get on, you spin up your environment. You give us a little bit of information about the size of your environment. We do offer controls so that you can cap
that was my next question.
The RPUs, which we refer to, which is basically a pricing mechanism and scale, but you can cap that. You can set minimums and caps. But you go in, you set it up, and as soon as it launches, you're in our query editor V2 that I described, and you can just start creating tables, moving information around, and browsing other. If you have another environment that you want to connect to, you can do that as well. So it's a very seamless experience to get up and running.
I think one of the coolest things about Redshift is that, and AWS in general, the beauty of it is that you start with one thing, and then you have like this whole array, this whole menu of other services to choose from, and they're all seamless and integrated. And so like once you're there, you may not know that you need to add on other things like Aurora and things like that, but you will find that out along the way, and that's all right there, easily accessible, easy to get, attached to, build it together, start building these things out from a main point, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that we're all big believers that one size does not fit all, and providing the best of breed capabilities within our services is something that I think is just so critical for our customer workloads. But to your point, also adding to the best of breed the ability to take advantage of the different services and the ability to move information around seamlessly is also really important. And data in general usually is where this often comes together when you see these different workloads. And you'd also mentioned governance and access and control, which is another really important reason to have that type of authority across the data so that you know who's accessing it and you can set your single policies and manage against it, which as organizations get bigger and more distributed and you have different rules in different countries, that becomes critically important.
I think the one thing that you say on that is really important because, and you kind of put this all together, you can stay within AWS services, so you don't have to use outside third party. And the problem with third party is sometimes you go, okay, what is that security of that company? Or if you have AppSec like we do, they want to know, how does this handshake with something? And third party services sometimes can be kind of very touchy and tricky trying to get through those, company AppSec policies. So I love the fact that this is kind of like a one, I don't want to call it a one and done because you're adding all these building blocks. But I love the fact that you're taking out that third party and making it a more secure environment.
We are, and the one thing I should also say though about Query Editor V2 and third parties in general, for any data warehouse, and of course many of our services, we love the third party applications that use it, whether it's a BI tool, it's an ETL tool. Those are just so critical in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And they will always have a role, and we will continue to work with them and partner with them and optimize with them. But what we found from a self-serve aspect is people just want to get started with something.
Yeah.
And that very few clicks needed, get into the query editor v2, take a look at what you have, or start doing some basic things. It's really important from a user experience. So it's not that we want to go and replace some of the third-party tools that are out there. And, you know, as I said, we love our partnerships and we continue to build on those. But we got a lot of feedback that it would be great to have this capability without needing to be an admin so that we can help our customers scale out, as we talked about. And that's really the role that we're serving with the query editor.
I could see, like, if I'm in marketing, I might not know how to do SQL. I might not know how to pull that. So I'm not a coder. I just want the data now because I need to determine what that product is going to, how it's going to do in the market, kind of thing. So I love the fact that, yes, it is a very easy setup for someone.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and you have that option for the experts who understand every single line of a SQL query, and then you have the ones for just like, here's a dashboard to get you started, because it's, you know, maybe you don't want to go into all that complexity. I'm not super into like metrics myself, because I do come from more of a marketing background. So so you have that, you can go either way, which is really cool. I actually have a trivia question for you that you may not be able to answer, but because I've been at Amazon for a while, I feel like Redshift has been in the vocabulary for a really long time. Do you know where that name came from?
I actually don't.
Okay.
I have my own ideas, but I actually don't officially know where it came from.
Really?
But
Okay.
we can find out.
I was just curious because, you know, like I said, I've heard it for a long time, but never really knew the origin of it. So, yeah, I was just kind of curious. Maybe that's your homework.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So as we're getting closer, I want to bring up one other thing, and this was relatively newly announced. I want to say not too long ago. I even want to say it was at reInvent, but don't hold me to it because my brain isn't really working that much on lack of sleep. Amazon Aurora Zero ETL.
That's zero, yep.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Zero ETL, again, takes information from Aurora, which is our operational transactional data store platform, and seamlessly gets that information over to Redshift. We announced it at reInvent. And really what it does is it takes a process that can be done, of course, without this managed service capability to do it, but there's a number of cumbersome things that need to happen. And a lot of our customers came to us and they just said, look, we've got some very mixed workloads here. We've got the transactional data store in Aurora, but we'd like to bring that information into Redshift, maybe because we want to combine it with some other information. Maybe there's multiple Aurora source environments that we want to bring together and do some analysis on. Can you make it easy for us to do that? And so what we did was we did the work to basically map all the data types, create a channel that integrates between the two. We will initially seed the information, so we'll take an existing Aurora environment, we'll seed the data over into Redshift, and then we will monitor the change data capturing. So as the data changes, we'll apply those changes in Redshift automatically. And so far, the results we're seeing from a lag time perspective are really good, within seconds, and the data is up to date in Redshift. So this again is something that we will continue to build on, and you know, we're learning a lot of interesting use cases. Some of the early adopters have taken information from Aurora, they've moved it over to Redshift, which is really, we call it ETL. It's really extract and load.
Yeah,
so EL.
yeah, it's really EL.
And the
Sorry,
T.
T.
Well, it's okay. The T, the transformation actually comes into play once it's in Redshift.
Yeah.
There's a lot of transformations
So
you can
ELT.
do. Well, exactly. I mean, that ELT has become the new moniker for
It is a new catchphrase here. You've only heard it on AWS On Air. ETL is now ELT.
And it turns out Redshift is a great platform to run the transformations on. It's very simple to do. You can do SQL. You can run lots of different types of.
And streaming. I heard that you can work with Kinesis on
We
streaming.
do. We have managed streaming ingestion.
Nice.
You can actually load directly from S3 as well. So it's not just the zero ETL. When you think about any analytic environment, we want to make it really easy to move the information in. We want to make sure it scales. We want to make sure that your time to insights is really fast.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure we can share those results out with anybody that needs to see it, and only those who need to see that information. And that's really what it's about. So multiple ways, lots of investment going into making it easy to get the information in from both AWS services as well as external services.
I love it. Now, we're almost out of time. How do people get started?
So easy. I mean, the best place probably to learn about this is just go to our Redshift serverless webpage. We have lots of customer stories. We have lots of examples.
And free credit.
Free credit
Free
for those
credit.
who haven't used it before, and definitely take advantage of that. So go to the site. It's easy to sign up. It's easy to get started. We've got a lot of great tutorials there.
Nice.
And of course, reach out if there is any help that anyone needs.
I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thanks for having me.
conversation.